Let's jump right in and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're cracking open the hidden financial machine behind MicroStrategy. Now, this is a company almost everyone thinks they understand, but honestly, very few actually do. A lot of people just assume it's basically a proxy for Bitcoin, just a really easy way to play the crypto market on the traditional stock exchange. But the reality, it is way more complex and frankly, a lot more fascinating than that.
Okay, let's start by wrapping our heads around a truly startling figure. 840,447. As of mid-August, that is the staggering number of Bitcoin currently held by MicroStrategy. And with an average acquisition price sitting right around $75,385 per coin, we are talking about an absolutely colossal crypto hoard. They have literally tied their entire corporate identity to accumulating this digital asset.
But having such a massive treasury forces us to ask a pretty jarring question. Why on earth did they recently raise $333.7 million from their own shareholders in a single week, only to turn around and buy absolutely zero Bitcoin with it? I mean, it sounds completely counterintuitive for the world's most famous corporate Bitcoin holder, doesn't it?
The zero Bitcoin mystery, a shocking contradiction. To solve this paradox, we actually need to look closely at what happened the week of August 19th, right when Bitcoin was making a major move and pushing above $68,000. So when Bitcoin broke above 68K, MSTR stock naturally jumped, right? It shot up about 13% during the trading session. But here is the crazy part. While the stock was exploding higher right alongside Bitcoin, management was quietly executing a totally different plan. They sold 3.46 million of their own shares to raise that $333.7 million, and yet they made zero Bitcoin purchases that week. Zero. Now, they didn't sell any of their crypto either, but they for sure weren't just mechanically buying the dip or the rip, like so many investors just assume they do.
More than a proxy, breaking the one-to-one illusion. We really have to shatter this incredibly common misconception right now. MSTR is not just a simple leveraged Bitcoin ETF. It is not just a crypto price chart wearing a different ticker symbol. There's this brilliant quote from our source material that hits the nail right on the head. There is an entire capital structure sitting between the Bitcoin and the common shareholder. Think about that. That is an invisible wall separating your shares from those 840,447 coins. Owning MSTR doesn't just mean you simply own a fraction of their Bitcoin vault. You're actually owning a piece of a living, breathing corporate entity.
Because they are a full-fledged corporation and not just some giant crypto wallet, the daily fluctuating value of their Bitcoin doesn't directly generate operating revenue. If Bitcoin surges by $10,000 today, MicroStrategy doesn't magically have $10,000 extra dollars in their bank account to pay their staff or service their debt. The asset's value on paper is entirely separate from the actual cash flow required to keep the business running. The $4.8 billion buffer, following the money. So if they weren't buying Bitcoin with the $333.7 million they just raised, where exactly did all that cash go? Well, that brings us to their massive financial safety net.
That newly raised cash was definitely not sent over to crypto exchanges. Look at this breakdown. About $149.1 million went straight into their USD Reserve. Another $132.2 million was used to repurchase STRC preferred shares, which is essentially them buying back a specific type of company debt. And then $52.4 million went to paying out dividends on those exact preferred shares. They funneled hundreds of millions entirely into corporate maintenance, managing preferred securities, and basically building up an absolute fortress of a safety net. And that strategic move pushed one specific metric to an eye-watering level. By shifting those funds into cash instead of crypto, management grew the company's total USD reserve to an incredible $4.8 billion. You might be wondering, why does the world's biggest corporate Bitcoin bull need billions in cash sitting around? Because a $4.8 billion reserve provides critical breathing room without ever forcing them to sell a single Bitcoin. Imagine if the crypto market dropped sharply, and right at that exact moment, they desperately needed cash for dividends or debt obligations. Having this massive reserve isn't a bearish signal on crypto at all. It's just pure pragmatic risk management to protect their entire strategy.
The MSTR feedback loop. The financial machine in action. Let's see how all this builds into a very specific, continuous cycle where the genius and, to be fair, the risk of their whole corporate strategy really shines.
This strategy operates almost like a high-performance engine. Step 1. Bitcoin's price rises, which immediately improves overall market sentiment. Step 2. Driven by that hype, investors bid up MSTR stock, making its equity valuation highly attractive. Basically, it trades at a huge premium. Step 3. The company capitalizes on that premium by issuing new shares to raise cheap capital. And step 4, they take that newly raised capital and either fortify their balance sheet, like we just saw with the dollar reserve, or they buy more Bitcoin, which reinforces their identity and keeps the whole loop spinning. When it works, it is incredibly powerful.
Bull versus bear scenarios, two sides of the strategy. But as we all know, a flywheel can spin in both directions. This strategy is a highly sensitive, double-edged sword.
Let's weigh the outcomes here. In the bull case, Bitcoin rises and enters a sustained run. MSTR commands that premium we talked about, access to capital remains super cheap, and their balance sheet expands aggressively. It's a beautiful thing if you're a shareholder. But in the bear case, if Bitcoin falls substantially, that MSTR premium starts to shrink. Suddenly, raising capital becomes very expensive. And because they are a real company with real financing obligations and real dividends to pay, having to raise money in a down market violently squeezes existing shareholders through severe equity dilution. The true number to watch, moving beyond the chart. Because of this complex dual market structure they've built, just tracking the daily price of Bitcoin on your phone, it's simply no longer enough if you actually want to analyze this company.
So here's the crucial takeaway. You have to watch the delicate relationship between 4 specific metrics to truly understand their financial health. You can't just look at Bitcoin. You have to monitor the MSTR share price premium, the actual amount of Bitcoin held per diluted share, because remember, issuing new stock totally changes that math, and you absolutely have to watch the company's ongoing financing obligations. If management balances all 4, the strategy is a home run. If they slip up, the whole model breaks.
All right, let's lay out the hard facts versus the massive unknowns. From their SE filings, we know, for a fact, they hold 840,447 Bitcoin at an average price of $75,385. We know they raised $333.7 million in a single reported week. And we know their dollar reserve is sitting at a massive $4.8 billion. But the unknowns, they're glaring. We don't know where the price of Bitcoin goes next. We don't know if MSTR will maintain its current market premium. And we have no idea if future capital raises will create value or just dilute the existing shares. It just proves that this company is operating at the absolute mercy of both crypto and traditional capital markets simultaneously. Which brings us to our final, somewhat provocative thought to chew on. The biggest question isn't actually whether Bitcoin will go up. It's this. What happens to MicroStrategy if Bitcoin goes up, but the broader market suddenly stops giving the stock a premium? Because this company's entire future depends on 2 completely different markets moving together. And when the crypto market and the capital market start pulling in opposite directions, well, that is when the real MicroStrategy story truly begins. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning the numbers, and we'll see you next time.